Hey everyone, welcome to Side Note Studio, a place where we spend time talking about certain topics and ideas that you might have some questions about. Around here, we're all about following Jesus with our whole lives, but sometimes we get stuck or we just want to know more. This is the spot where we'll dig a little deeper and hopefully all learn together so that we can grow in our relationship with God and others. My name is Brent. I am the student discipleship pastor at Gospel City Church in Granger, Indiana. And this is the first season, first ever episode of Side Note Studio. And we're going to kick it off with a series called Awkward Questions. One of the most complicated areas of our lives can be found in romantic relationships, dating, sex, and everything in between. I know especially in the years of middle school and high school, you can be bombarded with opinions and explanations for why you have certain desires and what you should do with them. And so we're going to take the next few weeks to tackle some common questions that come out in this area. And it might get a little awkward, but it's going to help us grow in our relationship with God and walk closely with Him. Side note, you can watch a couple of teachings I shared with our Gospel City students last month around this very topic. You can check it out on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Gospel City Students. But today I want to share with you a conversation I had with my friend Lyndon Azcuna. I'll let him introduce himself, but we tackle this awkward question: is pornography bad? Now, whether you already think it is or isn't, I'd encourage you to lean in to the next few minutes as we have this dialogue together of all the effects of pornography. And we take some side notes talking about the science behind what happens in your brain with pornography. Is masturbation wrong as well? And what do I do if I'm already in pornography? And so I really hope today encourages you as we have this conversation around a little bit of an awkward question. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Lyndon. All right, well, hey, Lyndon, thanks so much for joining me on this call today. I know we've had some conversations about this in just recent weeks, and so I'm excited just to hear again from your heart and around this topic of sexual purity, specifically when we talk about things like pornography and devastating effects that it can have. So, but I'd love for everybody to just kind of know who you are, a little bit about your journey, and why you think this is an important topic to talk about for teenagers in this day and age.
Hi, Brad. Good to be here. Good to be with your people. Love Gospel City. Lots of friends there. Lots of people I know. Name is Lyndon Azcuna. I'm the executive director at Lifeplan. Been married for 30 years. We have 6 kids. 4 girls and 2 boys at the end, age span 26 to 11. I think I got that right, 26 to 11. One of them is married already, no grandchildren yet. Been in ministry for about 36 years, nonprofit for 30 years. I've been in lots of youth ministry, inner city work, ethnic groups, prison ministry, fathering ministry. Just have the heart for children and the next generation kind of thing. So I love what you're doing and glad to be a part of this. Anything to help the next generation walk with Christ.
So when you think of kind of your background, so with Lifeplan, why is this topic so vital around this age? When I think of growing up, there was maybe an idea that, having the need for like a pregnancy care center or anything that has to do with like sex or whatever, like that's going to come later in life. But I think we're seeing that now in this generation, it's more than ever at a younger age. So maybe in your context, like, why do you think this is so important for teenagers to get a hold of right now, instead of like, hey, this is for like young adults, like when you're in college or in your 20s?
I know the topic is on porn, and our pregnancy care center, we're help people that have unplanned pregnancy. We're much more than that. We even realized since I've been here, we thought deeply about the root of why we have unplanned pregnancies. And it's broken relationship, it's marriage or relationship that are not grounded on scripture, obviously. And so, and if you go even deeper than that, it can lead to sexual dysfunctions, and which is one of them is pornography. And pornography is the real epidemic, to be honest with you, Brad, and to your people. We talk about COVID today, but the real epidemic is pornography in our world. And to just give you kind of an understanding of that, pornography affects the individual, it affects family and family members, and it affects our society, and it affects the world. And hopefully through our talk, we can realize that more. Just to give you an idea and the effects of pornography, if you add up all the revenue of I'm gonna use some things that your kids understand. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, eBay, Yahoo, Apple, and Netflix combined annual income. Pornography industry is more than all of those combined.
Wow.
And even more than that, your kids know the NFL, the NBA, the Major League Baseball. Pornography is much more than all those industries combined annually. You even look at ABC, NBS, CBS, all those shows at night. The porn industry is billions of dollars more. In fact, according to some stat in 2006, I don't even know, recent, $97 billion annually.
Wow.
That's just to give you an idea, and another idea, that's money's worth. How about this? Just one pornography site, just one, and there are thousands and thousands of them, thousands and thousands. But just one pornography site, the viewing equivalent of that one pornography site for 1 year is this. It is 525,000 years.
Yes.
5,246 centuries. That's how much one site had its viewing equivalent. And they say there's a spending of 3,000 every second on pornography, 28,000 plus viewing every second. There's one video being made every 39 minutes in our world. And I'm telling you, the target age that they have is 7 to 11. And the average age, depending on who you ask, is between 8 and 11 years old viewing. This is the real epidemic in our society. We're not even talking about the danger yet. This is just giving you the impact.
Yeah, the impact of it. That's okay. So when I think about that, it's mind blowing. It's kind of staggering. It's hard to even wrap your brain around. But it's obvious that it's, like you said, an epidemic, that there's something major happening here in this industry. And so, maybe a question, because there's probably two groups of people that I can think of, even within our context here at Gospel City students, but then in people I've talked to throughout my life, there's kind of these two camps. There's people who have experienced pornography and have maybe struggled with it, have dabbled in it, or are addicted to it. And then there's another group of people who just find it repulsive and disgusting and could never imagine themselves like logging on it and watching something like that. And not even outside of like gender of girls versus guys, I have found that to be true in both camps. And so when we hear those numbers, I don't want to exclude hey, this isn't for the people who find it repulsive. We need to be made aware of this. We need to know that it's happening, because it's not just the hardcore pornography websites with the videos. It's a porn culture that's affecting all of our media. And so, but what I want to help that one camp kind of get to and understand is, why is porn so attractive to people? Why is that much money being spent? Why do we struggle with it? Do we tend toward it? Do you have any insight on that you can share with us, Lyndon?
Yes. And you can go complex, or you can go simple. And I'm going to go simple for your people today. So why is porn so addictive? Why is porn so addictive? And I love, you can go online. There's some organizations that are anti-porn, and one of the best ones on information. And I love their organization name because it really hammers the point of what this is. It's called Fight the New Drug. That's the name of the organization, Fight the New Drug. And it's really the best way to understand porn, because porn is like an addiction. It's like an addiction. And let's think about for a second, we've seen a lot of movie shows and a lot of, we've seen movie shows, even maybe some people in that we know that they're on drugs. And what are the things that we would use to describe them? Here are some words I want to use. They're tolerant about things because they're so addicted to something. Obviously, they're addicted. They're out of control. They're very compulsive. Sometimes they withdrawal now. So signs of addicted person. So what happens is this. I use this illustration. Our brains are like plastic. It can be moldable. It can be moldable. Okay. So when we view porn, what happens is there is dopamine that's being released. Dopamine is, we use dopamine for everything, like eating. I like this food, I like this burger, dopamine is gonna be released. And guess what? I'm gonna go back to get that burger or seafood. We were just talking downstairs, pizza. What you like, dopamine releases. Some people get dopamine by jumping in an airplane, okay? Whatever. The dopamine is part of life. In fact, in business, in everyday thing, your checklist, I don't know if you know this, when you do your 10 checklist, dopamine is released and you feel good. That feeling happens when you watch porn, okay? So when you watch porn, it's released and you want that, you want more, and then you get more, and then you want that sensation again. And the brain goes in one way, but if you have enough of something, it starts to shape that way. They call it neural pathways that's being created. There's healthy neural pathways, but there's also, as you start getting into porn, there's negative. And it is a loop. If you like it, it's released, and then you get more, it's released, you want more, and that's when the addiction starts. And that's when new neurons are being formed, new pathways, and then you get addicted and you can't get enough. Yeah. You really can't get enough, so much so that you steal, you do everything, you lose control, you're compulsive, you can't stop. And the danger is, that's why they even say that there's no such thing as just regular porn. If you continue, it becomes hardcore. That's why they have child pornography. That's how degrading this thing is, because it's never satisfied. You want more. That loop continues, that addiction continues, and there's a new pathway. Now, a positive thing is, if you do stop, you can create new pathways. Yeah. Okay. Rewire your brain to go a certain way. That, in a summary, is kind of a way to understand why porn is so addicting. Yeah. It releases dopamine, and the cycle continues, and you want more and more and more until you can't have anything unless you have that.
Yeah, that's really helpful, and it's scary to some degree because it can feel a little bit like, oh man, now not only is there like an emotional like attachment to where maybe I went to pornography in the first place because of something that happened to me or whatever, or I was exposed to it, but now like in a scientific way, there is a battle that's going on as well that we have to fight. So it's coming at us from all fronts. And so, those are some of the dangers. I love to like talk about, okay, so that's what can happen in your brain, right? So what other dangers, what other things are effects or kind of factors that happen, consequences, if you will, of pornography?
This is the scariest part. And I just want to say this at the beginning. I'll even say this at the end. one of the most important thing that's if you're just beginning to get into porn, or people are begin to, is to understand its impact. Because sometimes, just like any drug, we don't understand its impact, but it has tremendous impact. And I think this is one of those important points in this talk. The impact is this. I'm going to start very simple. I'm going to start with you, your family, society, in our world. Okay, even society and world we'll put together. Let's start with you. Okay. This is the scary part. It obviously rewires your brain. You become an addict. That's why fight the new drug. Remember that organ fight. It's a drug. It'll rewire your brain. It will rewire your behavior, because obviously you want more of this. So you go whatever it takes to get this, even at the expense of family. So it begins to destroy you as a person, because you are transforming. And let's go a little bit deeper. It just transforms your brain, but also it destroys all of your relationship. Let me start with the single person first, okay? Here's the danger, and I love this illustration. Somebody gave me this illustration. Let's pretend it'll destroy, as a single person, of course, everyone is looking forward to that marriage, right? This is how it'll destroy your marriage. Let's pretend you're an athlete and somebody's asked you, okay, in 6 years, you're going to be in a championship. And I want you to prepare now in this sport, so you become a champion or playing in this sport in 6 years. So right now you're preparing for this sport. And they say, let's say it's golf. Okay, you're going to be golfing. You're going to be practicing golf every day. And you're going to get training on golf. You're going to learn more about golf. You get all this golf skill. You do this golf thing for the next 6 years, training, preparing to play golf. The day comes when the game is starting. And when you go to the game, all of a sudden, the game is football. Somebody did a switch on you. So in other words, if you learn as a teenager that marriage in sex is like this, is like porn, all of a sudden you view it, you learn it, and then all of a sudden the day of your marriage, your honeymoon, and sex with your wife isn't the sport that you practiced in. And you and your wife will be devastated. They also say that eventually if you get into porn and you're really addicted to it, you become impotent.
Wow.
Impotent. So I just want to, for the individual, this is what, and I wanted to use this illustration too. I wanted to use this illustration. This is what porn does to you as an individual. I just want you to know it messes you up individually. And I'm only saying right now this, but here's the other effects. Marriage. What if you're married and you're into porn? Imagine your wife or your partner, your wife will never live up to the expectation that the porn image has. Yeah. And it will mess her up or him up in his self-esteem and so forth. Yeah. I want to say this. What does it do to families? And I want to use this image. I always like to use image. It's like taking dynamite and throwing it in the middle of your family. Body limbs goes all over the place. Yeah. Because they cannot, no one can ever live up to porn. No one can ever live up to porn. So it destroys your wife. It's destroys. Imagine if your children think that this is what a relationship is supposed to be. When people are become objects instead of people to treasure. That's why it's so destructive to family. There are many stats. Families, I think 300%. That if there's a couple are in marriage with pornography, it destroys their self-esteem. Anyway, society, it degrades your people to women to become objects. Porn leads to violence. Not only that, if you know sex trafficking, it's like the drug to sex trafficking. It leads to sex trafficking, sex slavery, sex trafficking. The porn industry is even getting worse in its extremeness because child pornography and all that. So imagine this. If you're a judge at a jury in a court, and someone is accused of abusive to their wife, and you view women as objects, your judgment would be altered. Your judgment would be false in its way of approaching. In other words, your judgment call are blurry. You would think right is wrong and wrong is right. So you see how the impact of our society, and it's sad because if you can just look at the media, sports industry, all that, women have to dress a certain way to be accepted, kind of thing. It's that pornographic. They say pornified culture. We live in a pornified culture. So the impact is devastating. And if you think about the money that's being spent, you think about the time that's being spent, people are really enslaved to pornography. And so time, money, relationships, and self.
Yeah.
It's crazy. One of the things you said that kind of stood out to me was the thought of, I think people might think, well, it's not harming anybody else because it's just me, right?
Yeah.
But there's all, like lest we get so caught up and be so arrogant as to think like we're our own little universe and the sun revolves around us. We have to understand that these are affecting different things. And I think of, the teenagers who are listening or watching this and maybe are in a relationship with a guy or a girl, a dating relationship, or, engaged to married, any of that. It's just them. But your choices are affecting your family, like whether your parents are in the picture, your siblings, you have a group of friends, and that kind of pathway down to where you're now isolating yourself. You're making choices like to go and view pornography rather than do these other things. And then as followers of Christ, we have to understand, like, if we're viewing pornography, God is nowhere near that picture. Yeah. And so when we come to church or we're trying to build a relationship, but we have this thing, there's a major roadblock to developing our relationship with others, but most importantly with the Lord. And sometimes we get caught in this lie, and I think the enemy uses it to his advantage to kind of say, this is an innocent little thing. It's not a big deal. You're not hurting anybody else. You're not actually having sex or whatever. And then even above and beyond that, you think that there's, on the other side of that screen, those are people that were created in God's image, and we have turned them into an object, a resource for our own pleasure, not caring how degraded they are or any of that. And so I just think, as you were talking, we gotta kind of move ourselves past just ourselves, start to think about others and even society as a whole.
I want to just read this. Tim Chester gave 12 reasons why to give up porn, and it's just a summary of everything that you and I have been talking about. Porn wrecks our view of sex. Porn wrecks our view of women. Porn wrecks women's view of themselves. Porn industry abuses women. Porn is sin against your wife. Porn wrecks families. Porn is enslaving. Porn erodes your character. Porn wastes your time, energy, and money. Porn wrecks your relationship with God. Porn wrecks your service. God's wrath is against people who use porn.
So we've given some compelling things as to why porn is not, a good avenue for any part of our life, and all of that. And I want to close in just a minute by talking about okay, so what do I do if I'm stuck in porn, or if I viewed porn, like what do I do now? But there is this one time. So this series is called Awkward Questions, and so I want to give this to you, Lyndon, as a man of God, a pastor's heart, a shepherd of God's people. Sometimes we can start to like parse down our desires to a point of saying, well, is there a line that gets crossed? So we can understand that pornography will almost always lead to masturbation, right? The idea of like, well, I'm going to act this out. I'm going to feel the dopamine hit for me and all of that. And over the course of time, I've heard this question asked of like, well, is masturbation then wrong if pornography is not involved? And I remember as a teenager going through the throes of puberty, and I remember one time my dad saying to me, "Well, if you can't," he's like, "if you don't lust, you can masturbate." And being and being in my teenage mind thinking, oh, so there is a right answer, right? Yeah, and there's a loophole somewhere. Yeah. But I just want to speak to that, like to the idea of like, is there ever a right time for that or whatever, or what are some of the effects that can have on us, and what would be your recommendation to someone who's struggling? It's like, well, if I quit pornography, can I still do this, or can I have this without the porn, or whatever?
Okay. Now, I will say this is a very controversial topic because there's both sides. You can get both sides, but I just want to say something here. I don't think the question is masturbation a sin? I don't think that's the question. I think we need to get behind that. And what is the purpose of sex? Yeah. What is the purpose of sex? Sex purpose is for the gratification of the other partner. Yeah. And that's the body and the church, love one another, submit and all that. So I believe sex is for the other person, and anything that I use in the context of sex for self gratification, I think that's wrong. Yeah. So if your masturbation is for yourself, I believe you need to stop. Yeah. I believe you need to think about it in the context of what is this for? And this is for the context of marriage. Yeah. And so you need to, I would say that, it's a very complex, and you need to let the Holy Spirit speak to you on this context, let the Word of God speak to you, read up on it. But just, I use that simple analogy that I don't want this either. I don't want one side always going to be, I feel guilty because I'm masturbating. I don't want them to, that's extreme, and I don't want to go all the way. You can only use this in the context of marriage. But no, sex is for the context of the other person. Yeah. And anything that I use for self-gratification, I believe is wrong. So
that's really good. I was hoping you'd go there, because it does. I felt a little bit like a lawyer, like I'm trying to ask the question without like leading the witness a little bit, because that's it. Like sometimes I think we get so stuck and we start asking the wrong questions because we're trying to gratify a deeper desire. Yes. And and so thank you for that wisdom, because that's super helpful. I think when we start to remove what sex is, and start to just go to the science of like, well, here's what it feels like, and here's the benefits of this, and I blah blah blah. When you can be so self-absorbed to think that it's all about you, and then you're missing the point of why it was created in the first place. And so I love that. I think that the best thing we can do in all contexts of life, outside of this discussion and anything when we're following Christ, is get to what am I glorifying God with this decision? Am I using it for the reason it was designed, or have I somehow twisted it to be about me and what I can receive? Right. And going all the way back to the garden, where the serpent's first lie is to say, did God really say? He's keeping you from something, and that's why, like, that's where sin starts, is like you're missing out on something. It's not that bad. It's better for you if you go and do this. Well, why is it about me? Why can't it be about other people? And that's a hard way to live. It's not, I'm not saying that, and you get that too. Like, that's one of the hardest things to understand in life. And it's a battle every single day. It's a battle when you're married. It's a battle when you're dating. It's a battle when you're single, to say, how can I use my life to serve other people?
Amen. That's why Christ died, for us not to live for ourselves, but to live for others.
That's it, man. So good. So a couple practical things maybe. Let's say there's somebody listening right now who's like, I want that. I want that freedom. I want to live in a way that's serving other people. I want to be free from this, but I'm just so trapped. Or it just keeps coming up. Like I'll have months of victory and then I'll slip up and I just feel like stuck again and I have to like climb my way out. What are some things you would offer, Lyndon, to say like, here's what you should do?
This is my favorite part here. This is my because I want to encourage your people. I want to encourage your people. And I know, like I said, this is an epidemic, and people, Christian, non-Christian, fall on this epidemic. They fall. You saw the stats. You know how real this epidemic is. And I want you to experience the grace of God. For you who are struggling in this is what I have to say to you. I'm sure many of your listeners have been to our local Hobby Lobby store, and Hobby Lobby has this plaque. It says, and I know you've seen this, you've probably seen it in people's houses and all that. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. For as high as the heavens as to the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than. I'm sure they've seen that. We've seen that in the Christian community. That's very popular in the Christian community. And I want to say this. I want to change that context of what that verse is saying, not because I'm saying it, but because it's the real context. It's about, we think this is about God's ways can change. And like, instead of going on this plane, I got derailed and it crashed, or I didn't get this parking lot, or I got this parking lot. We think that, yes, God can do all that in his sovereign hand. He can move in anything he wants. He owns the whole universe. But this is not that context. The context here is of Isaiah is God's people walking away from him, worshiping other idols, and God is calling them. They've been enslaved. God is calling them back. Starting in Isaiah 40, God starts to call them back. And he says, I will redeem you. And then I'm going to send a Messiah. And then in verse 55, look at the beginning 2 verses before this text, okay? I read that text. Let's read. That was verse 8 and 9. Verse 6 and 7 says this: seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his ways, and the unrighteous man his thoughts. Let him return to the Lord, that he may have compassion on him. For to our God he will abundantly pardon. Now the verse says, for my ways are not my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways, declare your way. As the high as the heavens is the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts are. The context of this is forgiveness. The context of my thoughts higher than your thoughts is I will pardon you and I will forgive you. I am a God rich in mercy. In fact, you can even say this in the only place in the Bible, Exodus 34. Exodus 34. You know the story when when Moses said, Lord, I want to see your glory. And God says, you can't see my glory. You'll die. But I will hide you under the rock and I will pass by you. And Exodus 34, Exodus 34, verse 6 says this. This is the only time in all the Bible that God describes himself. Did you get that? Yeah. Not that the people describe him like we usually do in the Psalms and all that, but this is where God describes himself. And this is what God said. Isaiah 34, verse 6. The Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. Did you get the first word? God describes himself as a merciful God. And in Ezekiel, Ephesians 2 verse 4, God is rich in mercy.
Right.
I want you to know, brothers, if you are sisters, if you're struggling with pornography, our God is gracious and merciful. He's full of mercy. You can't out-sin him. As high as the heavens, as to the earth, God will be merciful to your sin. He will pardon you. Don't think that you have to get better. The high priest, you come, Jesus is our high priest. He's offering sacrifices for us. Come, he said, boldly to me, to my presence. So I want to say to you who are struggling with pornography, God is merciful to you. God is very merciful. That's his character. He wants to be known as a God of mercy. So whatever your sin is, come to him. Just like the prodigal son and the prodigal son and the father was looking at a distance and running towards his son. The son couldn't even get all of his speech out. Put the ring, kill that fatted calf. That's how merciful our Father is to you. So if you're struggling with this, Jesus said to the woman who was sinning, go and sin no more. You have been given freedom. You've been given grace. That's who I want to say to those who are struggling. God is a God of mercy. Embrace his mercy. It's bountiful and it gushes when you and I are sinning. Secondly, I'm sorry, do I have a little bit more time, Brent? Those people who are struggling, who are just beginning into this pornography.
Yeah.
Because I know all of us are struggling with emptiness. All of us are struggling with emptiness. Every single one of us are empty. And we start to believe, just like Brent said in Genesis 3, that Satan can provide our emptiness. But Satan is a liar, and he will tell us that this is will fill your satisfaction. You're empty. In fact, they say if you study pornography deep enough, pornography is just an expression of there's something broken in you. That's not an excuse. There's something emptiness. There's something that you want that you should have gotten, that pornography you think will satisfy. Yeah. And it's a lie. Yeah. It's a lie. So what I'm saying this, in Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 13 says this. Verse 13 says, for my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living water, and hewed out cisterns for themselves, broken cisterns that hold no water. And I want to say this to you. If you think your emptiness is going to be fulfilled by pornography, you are wrong. It's a broken cistern. And this says you have forsaken the living water. What did Jesus Christ say? I am the living water. I am the bread of life. I am the resurrection. If you need life more abundantly, I can provide it. And it's only Jesus that will satisfy your deepest longing. Never pornography. Nothing will satisfy except Jesus. So go to Jesus. He's the bright and morning star, the lily of the valley, our greatest joy and satisfaction. That's what I would say to the people that are in pornography and need to be forgiven. God is a God of mercy. And those who think that they are empty and pornography will fill it, Christ is the only thing that will fill us. And he's done it. He's shown his love through the gospel by sending his son to live the life that we should have lived and die the death that we should have died. And now we have his righteousness in us. So be encouraged, brothers. Christ is the answer.
That's so good. I had a pastor friend of mine who was talking about this topic, and he shared the thought of, we kind of understand if you want to replace like a habit or something in your life, the greatest way to do that is to find something that has more pull or that, fulfills in a better way. And so when you think about exactly what you just talked about was so good, blessed me a ton, to think about we run to these sins, and pornography especially, thinking that it's going to fill this hole, and it doesn't, but the lie is so good that we keep coming back like, this time it'll be better, this time it'll be better, this time it won't be as bad this time. And the only way to get out of that isn't to just say, okay, I know it's bad, I'm going to stop. It's the same way, like if you want to, stop eating junk food, you have to get this stuff out of your house, but you have to get good food in your body. Like you have to eat well. You can't just stop eating completely. Yeah. And so the greatest weapon we have to fight against pornography is gazing upon the splendor and majesty of Jesus Christ, being so transfixed by the gospel that we realize that everything that we've been trying to fill is a poor substitute. And if we can't get there, then we're gonna keep running back to it. If you don't actually change and fix your affections on the Lord and what He has for you, then this will keep enticing you, because it's like, it's the bag of chips, it's the box of cookies in the pantry, right? It's easy and it gives you that dopamine hit. But if I see a sustained life in Christ, realizing I'm an eternal being, that I was created for eternity, and that longing that was placed in my heart was meant to be filled by Jesus, then we start to see victory over these things. And it has nothing to do with us, it has everything to do with Christ.
Amen.
So good.
Well said.
So good.
Well said.
Well, I'm grateful for your time. Is there anything else, while we got you here on this call, like anything else you'd want to share or say to just encourage us? Anything else you'd love to let us know about how we can be praying for you?
I want to invite because this is a passion of ours. I feel for the church kids. If you ask me, am I an evangelist? Am I a disciple? I'm more a disciple. I love to work with church kids. I love to work in the church, and I love to help people grow. And so because Lifeplan is into not only service to help women with unplanned pregnancy, but we're also about prevention. We're getting into schools. In 2020, we were going to share an anti-pornography seminar at the school. We're going to bring, in the Niles school, we were going to bring a speaker, then COVID hit, and that threw out the window. But there's a thing that we're hosting in September, and it's called Remade, being remade in Christ. And what this is a sexual integrity conference. It's like a purity conference. And it's going to be a keynote speaker and then breakout session. And one of those breakout sessions is pornography. But the theme of the Remade is, how does the gospel direct our sexuality? How does the gospel direct our sexuality? And the gospel directs everything, but how does it direct our sexuality is where Lifeplan is all about. Christopher Yon, he's one of the powerful testimony about someone who was in homosexuality, and he really brings home the gospel and the importance of our identity in Christ. Don't let the culture tell you what your identity should be sexually. The gospel, Christ is our identity. So this is what this conference is all about. It's in September. Brad will get more information, but I just want you guys to think about that. I'd love to have people come. There's going to be a general session and breakout session, and we'll even have something for pastors and parents, but it's primarily for high school age teens. It's called Remade, sponsored by Lifeplan, sometime in September.
Awesome. That's so cool. I love your heart for our church and our student body. I feel it even through this call, but I love seeing how God is working through you to impact our whole Michiana community and beyond, and really excited to partner with Lifeplan ongoing, but more so just grateful for your time today, Lyndon, and I'm praying for you.
Thank you so much. It was great. Loved it.
I love Lyndon's heart to help people in this area. I hope that you found his insights really helpful, really practical. Listen, maybe you know of somebody else who would benefit from hearing this as well. I'd encourage you to just take a moment and share the link with them. Let them know it's a valuable resource in this area. And all the resources we mentioned throughout the conversation will be linked in the show notes, so make sure you check those out as well. And that's going to do it for the first ever episode of Side Note Studio. Thanks so much for joining us. If you want to keep up to date with everything that's going to be coming out, make sure you subscribe. And that's the end of the Side Note. We'll see you next time.